Hello and welcome to another Airsoft upgrade video. The purpose of today's video is quite simply to turn a mid-range Airsoft AK-47 from something that looks like this into something that looks more like this. So we're not doing any internal upgrades at all today, or any new furniture, any new parts, anything like that. It is purely cosmetic. For this we'll be using the Cyma AK-47 Kalashnikov blowback AK. It's a mid-range AK, it's got a metal body, in fact all metal parts, and real wood furniture. Now you could probably do some of the same paint skills we're going to use in this video on a plastic body AK, but for the wood part you really do need real wood, because again part of it is the stain you get in the grain and you can't really get that with the plastic. This AK is about £220 here in the UK from Action Hobbies. As airsoft guns go, it's excellent. In fact, it's the only airsoft gun I've ever owned, and I've had probably more than 50, that I've never actually done any work to internally. It is completely stock and it shoots very nicely, so as a gun it's actually very, very good. It has the slappy blowback cocking handle on top of the gearbox, and actually a small recoil mechanism on top as well. You don't really feel it so much in semi, but it has got a reasonable bounce to it when you fire in full auto, and it sounds the part as well, as much as you can get from an airsoft gun. Now whilst you don't need any special tools or parts to achieve this look, you do need an airbrush, so I'll preface that straight away. If you haven't got an airbrush, I think you'll probably struggle to get the same look on this gun. But other than that, you don't need any special tools. This video will mainly be a slideshow because, quite honestly, it's too much of a ball ache to try and film it at the same time when you're doing it on your own. So hopefully that doesn't bother you too much. Alright, let's get cracking. So I have previously stripped all that horrible orangey Chinese lacquer off the woodwork and restained it, but I'm going to strip all this back off again. I've also done some light weathering to the metal parts, but nothing really extreme. Again, the only thing I've done up to this point is remove the horrible white Kalashnikov logo on the other side, which is horrific. So the first job obviously is to disassemble the gun into all its constituent parts, put the gearbox and the barrel all to one side, so you're just left with the metal parts and the wood parts. Wood parts need to be sanded back. You can do it quite easily by hand with a bit of sandpaper, and then I have re-lacquered them with a Teak marine varnish. Marine varnishes are a good idea because they're a bit more resistant than your typical indoor varnishes. And this is how it looks with a single coat of that marine varnish. Then the metal parts, such as the lower receiver, upper cover, front barrel parts, and all the other metal parts, are then sanded down just to key the paintwork, prime them in grey, and then spray them in satin black. If you're ever going for a metallic paint finish, it's always best to start it with a black base as opposed to like a gunmetal or a silver base, otherwise it will look too bright when you finish it. And with the teak woodwork and the black parts reassembled, this is what it looks like. It looks much more like a sort of Russian blackout style AK already, but obviously the woodwork's very, very bright on this, doesn't look particularly weathered, and we need to do a lot more work on the receiver. So one of the problems you always come up against whenever you're trying to get a blued steel finish on a magnesium or zinc alloy receiver, it's very, very difficult. It's very easy to say get a steel receiver and then blue it, but of course these are a lot of money. So my idea was to spray on a metallic blue, very, very light, over the satin black paintwork, just to give it that iridescent look when you catch it in the light. This is me spraying it on. You can't really see it going on very well, just due to the way the camera captures the image. You can see it much better with the human eye, but this is just a bit of that iridescent blue going on. I'll show the actual paint I'm using later on. This is the paint I'm using. It's one of the Vallejo standard airbrush paints. It's the 71071 Arctic Blue in their metallic range, and this is what it looks like out of the bottle. As you can see, it's a royal blue and it's got some, looks like aluminium pigment in it. It's got a nice metallic-y finish to it. Again, doesn't come out very well on camera, but it's got a very nice iridescent look. And then here we are going back over the receiver after spraying the bluing on using a gunmetal silver colour. Again, going over the top. This is just to give it that metal look, because again you're putting blue on top of satin black, so it really, it needs a bit of metal just to give it a bit of pop. It's very hard to see on camera. It looks like there isn't really anything coming out of it, and again, this is one of the joys of using an airbrush, is you can get very, very subtle amounts of paint from the brush. You can also see that I've pre-weathered the front of the barrel parts here. I've taken a bit of light sandpaper, it's a 1500 grit, just to the edges of all the metal parts, just to really take them back down to the bare metal to again give it that weathered, beaten look. And with the black, the weathering, the silver and the metallic blue, it's now got that nice blued gunmetal finish, which is very, very hard to get on a non-steel receiver. This picture shows the receiver in the black, just with the blue on top. I'm trying to catch in the light so you can just see the bluey colour to it. And again, I haven't put it on evenly all over, I've put it in patches and mottled it out. Again, I don't want it to look brand new, I want it to look weathered. But again, this shows that without the silver, it just kind of looks like black with a bit of blue on. And this is a magazine that's been half blued, so the right hand side of it has been blued and the left hand side hasn't. Again, difficult to show on camera, but just to give you an idea of the nice metallic finish you do get from putting that blue on top of the black. This is pre-weathering as well. So that's the metal parts done for the moment, and here we are touching up the wood, just using a plain old black, going on to where the wood meets the metal, because this is where you tend to get the most weathering on it. It's all the areas that you don't touch normally. Same on the butt pad here. The butt pad attracts a lot of dirt, a lot of oil and a lot of grime, especially with a cleaning kit in it, so that's the area you want to darken out. Again, you're trying to go for a natural weathered look, so the areas where you pick the gun up, where you handle it the most, will be the cleanest, and the areas where again it meets the metal parts or where it sits on the ground are the areas that are going to be the darkest. And like I said before, with an airbrush you can get a very subtle touch with the colours, which you can't really get with rattle cans or by trying to dip it on by hand with a sponge or a brush. So if you do enjoy painting, you haven't got an airbrush, I would heartily recommend getting one. It will absolutely transform your painting. I'm still an absolute novice where painting is concerned, but I can still turn out a reasonably good product, so it's a worthy investment. And the same up on the handguards, darken it out where it meets the front trunnion, and especially in here around the gas parts, because obviously that's going to pick up a lot of carbon naturally. So we go nice and dark where the wood meets each other, and again at the ends of the wood and the front of the wood. All the places where all the oil is going to sit, all the dirt is going to sit, and it's going to get pushed in, and it's not going to get cleaned. Starting to look something like it. And we'll flip that bad boy over and have a look at the other side. So we've already done this side. Again, nothing too extreme at the moment in terms of painting or weathering, just small parts. Go in lightly, and you can also start to see that bluing colour on the metal parts now come out quite nicely, especially on the front barrel. So with the wood darkened and most of the metalwork painted, the last thing I did was used a nice light brown colour and just went over a few extra parts on the metalwork just to make it look a little bit rusty. You can see it there in the selector divots, and again in that indent where the front trunnion meets the receiver. Just a very, very light brown colour just to give it a little bit of age and a bit of rust. And the same thing up at the front barrel, a few very light rusty spots, and obviously whipped out those corners with the with that 1500 grit sandpaper just to show the metalwork underneath. You don't want to go too ballistic on it and start rubbing it down everywhere. You just want to pick out the edges, the highlights, the areas where it would weather naturally. Trying to weather things is actually incredibly hard, because as humans we naturally look for patterns, but you don't really get them. And then the last couple photos in natural daylights. The only thing I've done here again is just to go back over the woodwork once or twice more with that dark wash, just to go over those areas, just to really darken it out a little bit. It was still looking a little bit bright for my liking, and again I weathered the magazine as well. Same thing, whipping over it with that 1500 sandpaper just to pick out the high areas. And then lastly on the angle as well, just to show the front barrel. Overall it looks quite good, I think. I'm quite happy with it. Again, I'm no expert where these things are concerned, but I think it looks a lot better than it did when it first started, which was this. I think if you're going to use an AK, it has to look battle worn. It just doesn't look right when it's fresh out the factory like this. If you want a nice clean looking gun, then there are other guns I'd go for, but if you want your classic vanilla AK-47, no scopes, no wrists, no grips, none of that malarkey, then yeah, why not give it a go? Hopefully it's been of use to someone. Any other questions or anything I haven't covered, feel free to leave a message and I will get back to you. Thanks, see you next time.